All right, are you ready to get a little trashy?
Oh, is it trash day already?
Not exactly, but we are going on a deep dive today into Trashpocalypse, the world's garbage problem.
Sounds, intriguing.
It is, actually. And I think it might make you rethink what happens after you toss that banana peel or that old phone charger.
I think we all know it ends up in the landfill.
True, true. But this book digs a lot deeper than that. Like, what did garbage even look like, say, 100 years ago?
Oh, that's a good point. It definitely wasn't all the plastic and electronics we have today.
Right. Back then, it was mostly apple cores and newspapers. You know, stuff that could actually decompose.
Yeah. Imagine an archaeologist digging up a landfill from the 1920s versus one from today. What a difference.
It really makes you think. And it's a little frightening, to be honest, when you consider all the plastic and e-waste we produce now.
Especially the e-waste, all those phones and computers and, well, everything seems to have a chip in it these days.
That's true. Speaking of e-waste, maybe we should define exactly what that is for our listeners.
Oh, good idea. Basically, e-waste is any discarded electronic device. So that includes computers, phones, TVs, you name it.
And the problem is, those things contain a lot of hazardous materials. Stuff that can really cause damage if it just ends up in a landfill.
Right, exactly. It's not just about the space our trash takes up, but the potential harm it can cause to the environment.
Which brings me to this concept of trash tourism. It sounds a little like a joke, but this book says wealthy nations are shipping their garbage to other countries.
Oh, it's definitely not a joke. Sadly, it's been going on for decades.
So, like, my old phone could end up in a landfill in, say, Indonesia.
It's possible, yeah. The book actually uses that exact example. It often comes down to economics, you know. It's cheaper to ship waste overseas than to process it domestically.
Wow. That really makes you think about, where your trash goes after it leaves your curb. Makes you wonder about the ethics of it all.
Absolutely. It raises all these questions about environmental justice and who should ultimately be responsible for the waste we generate.
This reminds me of when China stopped accepting the world's recycling back in 2018.
Yeah, that was a big turning point.
I remember seeing photos of these giant stockpiles of recyclables with nowhere to go. What happened to all that stuff?
Well, some of it did get rerouted to other countries, but a lot of it ended up in landfills or even got incinerated, which of course releases harmful pollutants into the air.
It really shows you how fragile the global recycling system is.
It does. The book actually mentions that the world generates a staggering 2.2 billion tons of waste every single year.
That is staggering.
And less than 20% of that gets recycled.
Which brings us to, recycling itself. I thought I was pretty good at it, I rinse out my containers, put everything in the blue bin. But this book is honorably making me question everything.
You're not alone. There are so many myths and misconceptions surrounding recycling.
Like what?
For example, one big myth is that everything we put in those blue bins actually gets recycled.
Wait, so all that rinsing could be for nothing?
Unfortunately, yeah. Even a little bit of food residue or a greasy pizza box can contaminate a whole batch, and then it all goes to the landfill.
Seriously?
I have no idea.
And then there's the myth that plastic is infinitely recyclable.
Well, yeah. I mean, haven't we all heard that we should recycle plastic to help save the planet?
Right, but the truth is, most plastics can only be recycled a limited number of times.
Really?
Yeah, and each time you recycle it, the quality goes down. So a lot of it actually ends up as microplastics.
Those tiny particles that end up in the ocean and, well, everywhere, really.
Exactly. They're even in our food chain now.
The book mentioned that we ingest about a credit card's worth of plastic every week.
I know. Pretty disturbing, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so we've talked about the huge amounts of waste we generate, the issues with recycling, and this whole global trash trade. Honestly, it's starting to feel a little overwhelming.
I get it. It's a lot to process.
Is there any good news here? Like, what can we actually do to make a difference? Well, even though the problem is huge, there are actually a lot of really exciting solutions being developed.
Oh, that's good to hear. Like what?
Well, for example, did you know that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that giant collection of plastic swirling around in the ocean?
I've heard of it.
It's actually the largest man-made structure in the world.
Really? I knew it was big, but...
Wow, it really shows the scale of the problem, right?
Right.
But it's also inspiring to see the creative ways people are tackling it. For example, Sweden has this really cool waste-to-energy program.
Waste-to-energy?
Yeah, they actually burn garbage to create electricity.
So, instead of just sitting in a landfill, the trash is actually being used for something good.
Exactly, and they're actually powering homes and businesses with it.
That's amazing. Are there any other countries kind of turning trash into a resource like that?
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of innovation happening, and not just at the national level either. Like, did you know Adidas is making shoes from recycled ocean plastic?
Yeah, I've seen those. They're pretty cool, actually. It's good to know that, recycled materials can be just as good as new stuff. What else are people making with recycled materials?
All kinds of things. Clothing, furniture, building materials. I saw this company that's making playground equipment from recycled milk jugs.
Wow. Okay, so we can buy things made from recycled stuff, but how can we all do a better job of recycling at home? I'm still a little confused about what can and can't be recycled, honestly.
It can be confusing, for sure. I think the first thing is to check with your local recycling program. They all have different rules.
Okay, that makes sense. And then make sure everything's clean, right?
Empty and clean, no food residue or anything. When in doubt, just throw it out. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
But what about all the stuff that can't be recycled? This book made me feel like a lot of my efforts are kind of pointless. What's the point of trying if most of it ends up in a landfill anyway?
I know what you mean. It can be discouraging. But even though recycling alone isn't the solution, it's still really important.
Right.
Plus, technology is always changing, so what's not recyclable today might be recyclable tomorrow.
True. That gives me a little hope. Okay, so we've talked about what individuals can do and some cool solutions that are out there. But what about governments and policy? What role do they play in all this?
Oh, they definitely have a huge responsibility. We need systemic change to really address this, trashpocalypse.
So, like, what kinds of things could governments do?
Well, they could implement policies that encourage less waste, and better recycling. Things like extended producer responsibility programs.
What's that?
Basically, it's where companies are held responsible for the entire life cycle of their products. So that includes how they're disposed of.
Oh, interesting. So it's about getting companies to think about the end, right?
Yeah.
Not just making stuff and then washing their hands of it.
Exactly. Make it more cost-effective for them to design products that are easier to recycle or, won't create so much waste in the first place.
Makes sense.
Governments could also invest in better waste management infrastructure and do more to educate people about, the impact of their choices.
Right. Public awareness campaigns and stuff like that. So it sounds like it has to be a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Individuals, companies, and governments all working together.
I think so, yeah.
That actually makes it feel a little less overwhelming when you think about it that way. But what about the plastics industry? They have to play a role in this too, right?
For sure. There's a lot of debate about their role in all of this.
Like, what are they saying?
Well, some people argue that plastic itself isn't the problem. It's how we use it, and overuse it.
Okay, I can see that.
But other people think we need to move away from plastic altogether, find some more sustainable alternatives.
Right. It's definitely a complex issue. What are some of the arguments for and against using plastic then?
Well, if you're pro-plastic, you'd probably point to its versatility and durability. It's cheap, too.
True. And I guess it has revolutionized a lot of industries.
Right, like packaging and even healthcare. You can't deny that plastic plays a pretty vital role in our lives.
I guess not. But then on the other side, you have all the environmental concerns.
Exactly. Plastic takes forever to break down, and it's polluting our oceans and harming marine life.
And we're even eating it now.
Yeah. So it seems like finding a balance is key. Like, how can we keep using plastic responsibly without, destroying the planet in the process?
It's a tough question, and I don't think there's an easy answer. It'll probably take a combination of things. Better technology, stricter regulations, and maybe most importantly, a real shift in consumer behavior.
Yeah, I keep coming back to that idea of, just being more mindful, thinking about the choices we make every day, the products we buy, the waste we create.
It can't just be about tossing things in the recycling bin and hoping for the best.
Right. It's about understanding the impact of our actions, and making conscious choices to do better.
I think you hit the nail on the head. We need to realize that we're all connected to the environment, and our choices really do have consequences. That's a powerful thought. Okay, so let's finish this conversation with some action steps. What can our listeners do right now to make a difference?
Well, I think the first thing is just to be more aware of your own habits. Like, how much waste do you actually generate? Where does it all go?
Yeah, it's easy to just not think about it, right? We put it in the trash or the recycling bin and then it magically disappears.
Right. But once you understand your own impact, you can start making changes.
Like bringing your own reusable water bottle instead of buying a plastic one, or choosing products with less packaging. or, repairing something instead of throwing it away.
Exactly. It's about breaking free from this culture of convenience that got us into this mess in the first place.
And remembering that every little bit helps. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's progress over perfection, right?
Absolutely. Every small step you take moves us in the right direction.
And that's really empowering, I think. It's easy to feel helpless when you see the scale of the problem, but
ultimately, we all have the power to make a difference.
I like that. Okay, so for people who really want to dive deeper into this issue, what resources would you recommend? Like, are there organizations doing work in this area that our listeners could, check out?
Oh, absolutely. There are some great groups tackling these issues head on.
Who comes to mind?
Well, the Plastic Pollution Coalition is a good one. They have a ton of info about the problem and, ways to get involved.
Okay, what else?
And then there's the Story of Stuff Project.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
They have some really eye-opening documentaries about consumerism and all the stuff we buy.
They do a good job of, breaking it down and making it easy to understand.
Right. And, of course, there's the book itself.
Right. Trashpocalypse.
Yeah. If you want a really deep dive into everything we've talked about today, I definitely recommend checking it out.
So I guess we've come a long way in this conversation. We've gone from the stuff in our trash cans to, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
It's been fascinating, honestly, and a little bit scary at times.
Yeah. But I think the takeaway is that we're not powerless.
I agree. Every single person can make a difference.
Absolutely. Whether it's choosing reusable products or supporting companies that are doing things right, or even just being more aware of your own habits.
Every little bit helps.
Exactly.
If aliens were to visit Earth, I'd want them to see us as a species that's, capable of change. A species that can learn from its mistakes.
I like that. A species that chooses a more sustainable future.
That's a great way to put it. Well, that wraps up this deep dive into the world of trash. We hope you learned something new today.
And more importantly, that you feel inspired to take action.
Remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.